I did one like crazy prenatal yoga. This girl invited me to it before I knew anything about yoga. And I look back at it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
We were talking about that.
That was crazy. Like, she was like,
oh God.
I was like, I'm terrified. I was like,
I mean, we were talking about that, and it's like, the devil's the worst. He's like, let me just parade mini goats.
Don't you want to have some exercise?
But he's like, oh, let me just parade mini goats around. Like,
yeah. It's like, don't you want goats climbing on your body? Like, that's super fun.
But it's crazy, like, because we usually see the devil, like, in some sort of goat format, you know?
Yeah,
like, he
seriously.
always looks like a goat. That's how he's written. And so of all of the animals, let me just put little goats around you. Like, I'm sure they probably have chinchilla yoga or golden retriever yoga, but it's a distraction. It's like smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
It's like, look at all of the vanity of what's cute. You won't actually know what you're bowing down to worship, right?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Anyway, why don't you tell them what we're doing today?
Today, we are hearing the Madison Parada's testimony, and I'm really excited about it because I only know what she's allowed to talk about in public when I'm in her chair, and she's adjusting my extensions because she called me out on having them the other show. So cat's out of the bag, and yeah, we're talking about Madison's journey to Jesus.
Yes.
And just what the Holy Spirit has done in her life. And like, we all have a story of where we came from, but it's amazing to contrast that with where we are today. And I feel like I'm going to give you, Madison is a X-year-old woman who lives in Dripping Springs, Texas.
You can say my age. It's okay.
No, you're a lady. I would never. But I feel like I'm just kicking off the Super Bowl and giving your bio. But
yes. Just don't say my weight. Then we'll be good.
No, it's not like your stats.
It's like a boxing match.
I really need your wingspan before we start. But so I will let you take it away because I want to hear about your story, and I can't wait to hear all the nuances I haven't heard yet. Yeah. So let me get popcorn and you
don't burn it like I did last time. Okay, little disclaimer. If you are my mother-in-law, if you are my father, don't listen to this. No, but you can if you want, but your bubble might be a little bursted. But yeah, just know I'm not the perfect little angel.
The gloves are coming off in this episode.
But it's also good. Nobody's perfect, right? Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've always been one of those people that's like, my testimony's really boring. You know, nothing super crazy happened to me where I was like, you know, I should have been in a documentary or, you know. But I think all that goes to say, like, if you've been saved by Jesus, your story is amazing. Like, especially in this fallen world, if he got a hold of you and changed you, then you have a story to tell. So I'm here for those people.
I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
You just made, like, this line is so pivotal, is like the angels. This isn't the biblical reference. The angels freak out when one sinner turns their heart towards Jesus. Like, there is celebrations in heaven when one sinner repents and like enters into the kingdom. Yeah. And it's a big deal. It's a celebration. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, you give your life to Jesus and heavenly beings. I know.
I think about that like one day when we're in heaven, I'm like, I'll get to be a part of those little parties they keep throwing.
Like, oh, you're Madison? I was one of those angels that like celebrated you and you got saved. Like, that's such a cool concept to think about, right?
I know. It's so fun. Anyway, I guess I'll just start from when I was just a wee little girl. Yeah, I had your pretty average childhood. Had my mom and my dad. I mean, when Zach and I got on our first date, I had to like write out my family tree for him because it's all like half brother, step brother, blah, blah, blah. But so at this time I had just my older half sister and then my older half brother, both from like different marriages, brother, same mom, sister, same dad. So already kind of a broken family, but, I mean, pretty basic childhood. We would go to church on Sundays when my parents were married. I don't remember it being like, you know, learning very deeply about God or having a serious relationship. I mean, being a little girl. But one pivotal event that kind of starts us off is when I was 6, my parents got a divorce. And I'm ashamed to say the first thing that came to my mind as a 6-year-old was like, oh, I'm going to have 2 houses. I'm going to have 2 Christmases. And then my mom goes, or my dad, no, honey, this is a sad thing. I was like, oh, yeah, I know it's sad. I'm so sorry. No, but then I like did see like the vibes of my mom, like how sad she was. And then I fully grasped what was going on. And like my mom says, that's when my like biting my nails started. I started peeing the bed again. And I do believe that my mom, I doubt my dad would have gone to church without my mom pushing it. So I don't think my dad was going to church. And then my mom stopped going to church because I'm sure it was hard to get like all these kids out of the house on Sunday morning on your own. But so I don't really remember giving Jesus a second thought until I want to say like middle school. I started to get involved in the youth group in middle school. Would not go on Sundays. I only wanted to go on the fun days, Wednesday nights. It was only for fun, only to hang out with friends. I kind of blacked out during the message and just was there for the fun games and, you know, the eating competitions and the relay races. And me and my friend would always like match crazy outfits. Like, I don't know why. I mean, it was probably an attention seeking thing, but we would like, okay, what are we gonna like match? What are we gonna wear on Wednesdays? And people would be like, oh, what are they wearing this time? Like we would wear like tutus to youth group. Like, I don't ask me why, but it was just fun for us. But yeah, that was middle school. Zero relationship with Jesus. I like prayed before I ate, before I went to bed. That's it. Didn't give him a second thought. And then we hit high school, where I had gone to public school my whole life. And for some reason, my parents were like, you should go to private school for high school where you don't know anyone. Like, I know in their heart, their intentions were good because the school near that we were zoned to, you know, it was, sorry, but kind of hood. And they were just wanting to protect me and thought private school would be better. My stepdad my mom had remarried and my stepdad had gone to the school and loved it. So they put me in this high school where I don't know anyone. All these other kids grew up together in private school. You know, they have their little cliques and niches.
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
I did end up doing cheer, so that was helpful with making friends. The summer before freshman year, I made a couple good friends. But still, I remember being like very lonely, like the beginning of freshman year, because I did like had no friends. I saw all my best friends from middle school like hanging out together at the other high school. Yeah. And just all these kids, you know, they've known each other since kindergarten at the private school. So it's not like they're gonna be like, oh, like I'm here to make new friends. Like they're in their own thing
have their
already.
Cliques.
Yeah. So I do have a couple of friends, but yeah, I definitely was lonely, not having the best time. And I don't know where in the timeline, if it was like end of freshman year or like solid into sophomore year, I start dating this guy. And I end up dating him for a year, but that's kind of getting ahead of it. But basically that he becomes like my idol, my everything. Like I stopped hanging out with the friends I did have. And I mean, we're still friends, but I'm like, okay, I'm sitting at him at lunch. I'm hanging out with him in passing period, like literally obsessed. And in my head, it was like, this is my husband. Like I am marrying him.
Yeah.
And so all that to say, we end up sleeping together. And I mean, that I have such a heart for like sex before marriage and girls in high school, because like I used to always say like it's easy to be a Christian when you're married, like as if like sex is the only temptation that Satan's got to throw at us. But all that to say, you know, I'm clearly living in sin. I knew it was like my mom would rail it into my mind like sex before marriage is bad, like obviously, but I had no conviction of it like at all. Like I was just like, just because my mom doesn't want to. My like doctor was like, well, if you love the person, you should. I'm like, you should not be telling children.
You're like,
this.
oh, well, I'm gonna marry him, so it's fine.
I'm gonna marry him.
Like in your head, you're like, we're basically already married.
In my childish brain, like the first person I think I love, I'm gonna marry. But anyway, so this relationship's going on. He is like my everything. I end up getting invited to, like everybody else in their stories, a summer Christian camp. And the girl that invites me, I knew from the middle school youth group, and she invites me. It's like a week before. She's like, actually, I have a cheer competition. I can't go anymore. I'm like, cool. I'm going to like know nobody. So then I end up inviting one of my cheer friends, and she comes with me. And I'm like, this will be fun. Like, it's summer. I don't know if it was a winter or summer camp. I think it was actually winter. But so this camp is super fun. I'm meeting girls that are in the high school youth group because I didn't start going to that. Like, once middle school ended, I kind of stopped going to church. And then unless my mom like dragged us a Sunday here and there. And so all I remember really from that church or that Christian camp was, one, I met this girl named Dylan, and she was super cool. I didn't get too close to her during this camp, but I did meet her. She'll come into play later. And then there was one night where I don't even remember what the message was, but I just got, like, the first time felt like the presence of God covered me, and this deep, deep conviction for, like, having sex out of marriage. And
I had like an encounter.
Yeah. And I don't even think the message was about sex during marriage. Like, I think it was just like
the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, like this is what I need you to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was crying, and like the leaders were like, so like, what's going on? And they're like trying to get me to talk, and I'm like just too embarrassed to even like say anything. So that happens at the Christian camp. You know, we keep doing the fun activities. I go home, blah, blah, blah. And I think pretty quickly after that, I do tell this guy, like, we cannot have sex anymore. Like, that is, like, off the table. Like,
yeah,
I feel awful about it now. And he's probably like, oh, my gosh, this stupid Christian camp, you know? But I don't break up with him yet because I'm like, well, we just stop having sex and then, you know, we'll be good.
Yeah.
And then one day after school, my mom can't pick me up from school because she used to run a daycare, and she's parents were late picking kids up. So I go to the library to work on some homework while I wait for her. And Dylan is in the library, the girl I met from camp. And she's like, oh, like, I remember you from camp. And she's like, do you want me to take you home? Because she was a grade above me, so she could drive. And she takes me home, and then like every day the rest of my days at that school, she like took me home, and we like became best friends. She brought me to every Sunday service, every youth group, like a big sister. And she is like a very important part of my story because she like literally like took me and helped me, like brought me to Jesus and answered any questions, was a really great example of like a true follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I'm really
so good
into, you know, I'm like on fire for God. This is like my first time living like an actual Christian life relationship with Jesus. And, you know, I'm going to all the mission trips. I'm going to all the camps, and every one of my friends basically are from this youth group. You know, I'm like surrounded by accountability partners. It's like the whole thing. It's like really good memories from that part of my life. And that's why I'm like always telling girls, like, are you in a high school youth group? Like, like I had such a good experience that like
that's
the
amazing.
pastor and his wife, like obsessed. And so anyway, I'm not quite sure where the turn was made, but maybe so eventually, so I break up with this boyfriend. I do have Dylan, but she's not in any of my classes. She's an upperclassman.
Wait, why did you break up with the guy? Was the guy just
thank you
Yeah,
thank you,
you're welcome, I'm here for you.
Okay, so at this so this school that I go to is Catholic, it's not Christian.
Okay. Yeah.
And they would have required masses. I was never super into them. I was like, stand up, sit down, and I'm like, I don't know what this guy's is saying. But one time they had this one speaker that actually like spoke to my heart, and I was like, this is good stuff. And he said, you know, he was talking about you will never be truly fulfilled without Jesus. You will never have true joy without
Amen.
Jesus. And I was
Amen.
like, gosh, that was so good. I remember sitting next to my boyfriend at that time. And he was like, afterwards, I remember him saying, he's like, I do not agree with that. Like the way he was saying, you can't be happy if you don't believe in God. And I was like, goodbye. Like,
wow. So you went from this man, he's going to be my husband, to him saying that. And you were just like,
I think like
disenchanted. You were disenchanted.
Like that really put a pit in my stomach. I'm like, well, I don't want my husband thinking that way. And obviously he never thought he was going to marry me. I think I was like more obsessed than he was.
Yeah.
I was like truly like, well, this is my first, like, this is love. Like I'm marrying you. But, I mean, I think it was falling out of love with him as, you know, his reaction to not having sex anymore was not that great.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like, I mean, the end was coming, but at that, when he said that, I'm like, yeah, no. And I don't remember, like, maybe we mutually were like, yeah, or if I just texted, I'm sure it was over text because we were little babies. But anyway, it just ended up being broken off. And I was like distraught. Like I was really sad about it, but I just like trusted God and knew like that I was not going to get this pit out of my stomach until I broke up with him. And so, anyway, and then after that is when, you know, I'm really into youth group, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing all the things. It's going great. I'm making all these friends. And then, you know, I'm broken up with this guy. Dylan, I don't see that much because she's an upperclassman. And so I'm like, I really want to go to the public high school. Like back to, you know, beginning of freshman year, how I felt lonely, blah, blah, blah. So
you transferred your junior year.
So I transferred my junior year to the public high school. I knew a lot of people already from elementary and middle school. Obviously, they had made new friends since then, but I still was able to, like, you know, I felt better about my situation than at the Catholic school. And, oh my gosh, sorry, popped my knuckle. And I don't know, like, when this happened, but I just, you know, it's like my first time falling into complacency. Like I'm not as on fire anymore. I'm not,
but you're navigating a whole new environment, new friends and everything. So like you're kind of taken out of that state of everything is comfortable and exciting and familiar.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like you're navigating some new territory.
Yeah. And I don't know why, but at this high school, I mean, I think I had a good chunk of time of singleness after that guy. But then I think it truly was like an attention seeking thing of me where I'm like, it's just fun to have a boyfriend. Like I just want to have a boyfriend all the time. So I'd get a boyfriend and I wasn't sleeping with them, but I would like get a boyfriend. Obviously they don't love God. So it's like, I would get a boyfriend. They would want to have sex. I'd have to break up with them. And then I even dated a Mormon guy once because I'm like, he's not going to want to have sex with me. But then I kept getting into debates about him about Mormonism. And I'm like, and then I'm like, okay, this is not working either. But it's like, why do you even need a boyfriend, Madison? And Dylan brought it to my attention too once where she was like, you don't need to be having a boyfriend all the time. And that's where I got offended from that. And that became a whole thing of me and Dylan's relationship clashing. And then that made me kind of take a step back from church. And the whole thing, like I said in episode 1, where the seniors had to go up and speak, I was so scared of speaking on stage, especially when I wasn't walking in the Spirit at that time. Like, I didn't know what to say. Yeah. And so then I just stopped going to church, and I started dating this guy who was my best friend. And I never really wanted to date him, but he was always kind of like, I love you, please. And I was like, okay. Eventually I just gave in because I'm like, well, we're best friends. We laugh so much. Should probably be a good relationship. Yeah. And I don't know what happened, but, well, actually I do. Silly old me. He just, it was like our friendship vanished, and it became kind of toxic. And, I remember, I'm like, well, I still want to go to Christian camp. That's my favorite time of year. It's so fun. And so, but I remember him saying you're going to go to this camp and break up with me. And I was like, no. So I went into you know how you can go into a time with the Lord, like expectant? Like I went into this camp saying, I am not going to absorb anything that's said. Like I'm not going to come back changed, because I don't want people to be right about me. Like,
Good luck with that.
yeah. Well,
It's not how he works.
true. But I surrounded myself by people at that camp who were the same. Like we were just like talking about sinful things that we did, and not like having deep talks about the Lord. And like I really didn't let it change me. I like, of course, I'm sure had moments where I felt the Holy Spirit, but I was like, I'm not gonna like, dig deep into that feeling. But so I come back, and I'm still with this guy, and then somewhere down the road, Zach, my husband, DMs me on good old Twitter. And he says, hey, we should hang out sometime. And I say, hey, I have a boyfriend. Sorry. And but like I said, this relationship was a little bit toxic. Zach, I already knew his family. I was like treasurer of FCA, if you know what that is, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. His mom was involved with that, and his sister, and I knew it was like a godly family, and like that's all I ever wanted. And and Zach, I always knew of him. I had never talked to him before, and I would pass him and be like, he's so cute, but like he's way out of my league. Like he's older than me, and he's just like very popular. All the girls love him. I mean, if you go around in our hometown, it happens to me and it happens to his little sister. People will come up to you and say, are you Zach Parada's wife? Or are you Zach Parada's little sister? It's true. I mean, he was very popular. Everyone loved him. He was just a really nice guy. And so I'm like, why am I dating this guy when Zach Parada is knocking at my door? Like, what am I doing? So I break up with this guy, immediately start talking to Zach, which, like, I wish I had a period of, I feel like in my story, I should have a period of singleness, but it just didn't happen for me that way. Like, it would make sense for God to force me to be single for a while. But I think his plan is good, because I feel like if Zach hadn't entered my life, I would have gone off to college and like been a crazy girl and done crazy things. And I think this kind of protected me from that. And so I start talking to Zach.
I'm loving this. I love that he slid into your Twitter DMs.
Yeah, we start dating. And right off the bat, I'm like, we are like the same type of Christian. Like, if that makes any sense, which in my now thinking literally means we're both like lukewarm. Like, this is great. Like we still, like, we love Jesus, but we also like will say these things and do these things. Like, we're like the fun Christians, like, and so going into my relationship with Zach, obviously I'm like, I'm not going to have sex, but very quickly I fall in love with him, and I'm like, well, we're getting married. Like, so it's fine if we have sex. So we start having sex, and I mean, it's just like a miracle that our relationship has survived, because I feel like that was the enemy obviously tempting us, but you'll see how it goes soon. And so we're just dating. I go to hair school. I'm brand new hairstylist taking clients. I have this brand new client. She walks in and she's a Christian. I'm like, oh yeah, I go to, the Baptist church, blah, blah, blah. She's like, oh, well, like, have you heard of The Awakening? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, it's in Manteca, but it's tonight, and I really think you should come. I'm like, yeah. And then so she has my number, though, and she texts me, like, so are you coming tonight? Like, she's, like, forcing me to come. I'm like, well, I feel awkward. I just did this girl's hair. Yeah. Like, it would be cool to check out a new church. Why not? So I'm like, Zach, let's go to this church. And this is the Isaiah Saldivar's church, but they would just rent out this other church building. It was maybe, like, 100 people. And if you don't know him, he's like a very like loud, fast speaking type of pastor, kind of like intimidates some people. I mean,
he's like the awesome type.
Yeah. This very spirit-led, very spirit-led service. He does not have a pulpit or anything reading off. He is speaking from what the Holy Spirit is telling him to say.
Yeah, it's great.
And Zach and I are standing there like, WTF? Like, what is this? terrifying. Everyone's clapping, yelling, arms up the whole time. And we leave, we're like, well, that was a lot. And I was like, yeah. But then the next week I'm like, I kind of want to go again. Like, don't you want to go again?
Oh,
and
wow.
he's like, I mean, sure, yeah. So we go, and then I don't know how many times it took. And then it was so sweet. That client found me, and she like prayed over me at the end of the service. I was like, oh, I don't know how many times it took, but we go one time, and I just, again, have this same heavy conviction of like stop having sex before marriage, Madison. And like it's just like this pit in my stomach that I know like I am not gonna feel free until I like stop. And like I know I was gonna marry Zach. Like it's interesting when I feel like I'm a knower. Like I was not walking with God when I was dating the other guy. I was going based off feeling like, oh yeah, I know I'm gonna marry you, when truly I didn't. But with Zach, it was like a deep knowing. Like I was like, this is my husband. And so I just like came to him. I'm like, I just am feeling like awful about the fact that we're having sex. I do not think that we should be having sex. And like I still love you. I want to be with you, but I don't want to have sex again until we're married. And like, he was not, he felt, what's the word? Rejected.
Yeah.
He felt rejected by that. It wasn't like, I want to have sex. Like, no, it was like, it felt like I was breaking up with him a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, I could like feel the sadness radiating off of it. I'm like, I love you. I want to be with you. Like, this doesn't mean I love you any less. Like, this means I love you more. Like, that I want to like save that for us when we're married. And so I was like, just like sit on it. Like, tell me what you think. And then, maybe a couple weeks later, going to that church, right afterward, he was like, yeah, we should not be having sex. Like, he just had the same conviction.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Like, I did not want to get in a fight or like have to break up because you didn't feel the same way. Because it was scary, because I'm like, if he doesn't feel the same way, like, we're going to have to break up. Like,
yeah.
And so that church kind of brought me back into like a very like full life of walking with God. And, I'm pulled out of complacency, and then I'm like, I feel like I want to be involved with that youth group again, but I'm like graduated out. And I was like, Zach, wouldn't it be so cool if like we were leaders for the youth group? And so I like texted the pastor and the pastor's wife, and I was like we would love to like volunteer and be leaders. Like, we miss you guys, blah, blah, blah. So then we started leading, for the high school group. So everything's great. Zach and I end up getting engaged we get engaged 2017. I'm only 20 years old. And then we get married the following year, 2018. We buy a house, like, because we both stayed home. We were saving up. Obviously, we weren't living together. We buy a house. Zach moves into the house. And then when we get married, I move in with him. Then good old COVID happens, I'm doing hair, so the salons are closed. We had like all these big plans to travel a ton, like early in marriage. And I think this was 2 years after we got married, COVID happened. And we're like, well, we had an Italy trip planned. It got canceled. We can't go anywhere else. I'm like, well, like, this would probably be a good time to have a baby. Like, I'm unemployed. Like, it's perfect timing. Like, no, but I was like, well, we can't do anything else. But it actually was good timing, because like I was home with morning sickness and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I get pregnant instantly, and I am so sorry, Zach, because I told Zach, well, like, if I get off birth control now, I'm probably not going to be pregnant for like 6 months to a year. That's like how it goes. And then I get pregnant the next month. He's like, you said it would take up to a year. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, this was just the Lord's plan. Like,
yeah.
And so I like really, selfishly wanted a girl. Like, I just compared my brothers versus my sister. She seemed a lot easier to raise. So I was like, I want a girl. That seems easier.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm a girl. I want a girl. And so, but I had 3 dreams that I was having a boy, and I was at my gender reveal finding out it's a boy, and I'm just like so upset. And I'm like, those are just dreams. And then I go to my gender reveal. It's a boy, and I am so upset.
So you cried at your general?
I didn't
gender
cry.
reveal?
I was fake smiling the whole time, and I go home and I cry.
Oh wow!
And like people come after people all the time for this, because obviously I'm grateful to have any baby. Some people don't get pregnant so easily or don't get pregnant at all.
Sure, yeah.
And but I do feel gender disappointment is a real thing. Like you have your heart set on like having a little girl in cheerleading, or so but I knew, I'm like, well, God gave me this boy for a reason. We're gonna raise him up right, blah blah blah. So then fast forward, we decide, because of COVID and everything going on in California, we want to move to Texas. And my mom and stepdad wanted to move to Texas too, so it was perfect. They're gonna be there to help us with the baby. So we moved to Texas, and we get our house, everything's good. And I do feel like remembering being like, life is literally perfect. Like, like I built my clientele up in 2 weeks. We found our perfect house. Everything's good. Zach has his job, blah, blah, blah. And then as Finn gets older, like I'm noticing he's not talking. And like I see other kids his age, and like they talk really good. And I'm like, I keep taking him to the pediatrician, and he's like, he's fine. He's just a boy. He's an only child. They develop later, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. And so by the time he's 2, he's not talking. And I'm like, can I just take him to the speech therapist? Like, just see if that helps. Then she's like, I think you should get him evaluated with an occupational therapist. And I just knew, like, already, I'm like, he has autism. Like, I just knew, like, what kid needs occupational therapy and speech therapy. So then we go down the whole journey of finding out that Finn's autistic. And I was always on alert with it because my nephew is autistic. So I was kind of already picking up on signs, but the doctor always had me second guessing, because he was like, look at the eye contact. Like, he's smiling at me. But that's just stereotypical autism. Like, it's a whole spectrum. You can be social and still be autistic. Wow. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I always say that like this year was like the worst year of my life, because I was like, this was like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I had all these plans and like visions for his future, and they just like vanished. And I was like, I don't know what you're going to be like. Like, are you going to be 40 years old and I'm going to have to be changing your diapers? Like, it's such a spectrum when they're so little, you don't know, will you ever speak? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to cut out the amount of times I say blah, blah, blah. And so like, I remember just like screaming, crying into my pillow. Like when that day she told me she wanted to evaluate him for occupational therapy. Like, and I was screaming to God, like not my kid. Like,
wow.
Like, sounds so selfish. Like, make the other kids autistic, but not mine. But, and I was just like praying so hard, like, please God, let him, progress in his speech. Like when he wakes up in the morning, like let him say mama for the first time. And yeah, I mean, I would put him to sleep, and I would go behind the door and just like lay hands on his door and like pray for him every night. Like, I'm like, come on, Lord, like this is going to be a good story. Like, you're going to give me like a miracle. And, I remember eventually like trying to turn away from God. Like, I'm like, okay, you literally don't care about me. Like, I'm just not even going to talk to you anymore. But in my heart, I knew like who I believed in. Yeah. I just like kind of wanted to piss him off and see if he would do anything that way. Yeah. And, of course it didn't work. And eventually I just like raised my white flag up and like surrendered. And I was like, okay, God, like even if Finn never speaks, like I will be okay with that, because one day we'll be in heaven and I will hear him speak then.
Wow.
I'm gonna get teary.
I just got goosebumps from you saying that.
And yeah, I think that's also when I like stopped having so much anxiety about it. And I was like, oh, like this is not permanent. Like one day he will speak. And then that just starts the whole journey of like, it is so hard to get your child diagnosed with autism, which is like insane. like they make it so hard to get an appointment to like, it's like a year wait list to get.
Really?
Yeah.
Just because there's not a lot of specialists?
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. There was like one in the area, and I was like, I will fly to another state if I could get this over with, because in order to get therapy, you need that diagnosis. So eventually it happens for us. Thank God for a few clients who like also have autistic children. They like helped me through the process. And he starts therapy. We didn't have a great experience with the first place, but then we find our second place after a couple months. And like he starts, let me rewind. He did say mama at like 2.5, like right around his diagnosis. So I was like, oh, thank God. Like at least he can say mama. And then once he turns 3, he starts to talk a little more, and he has just like progressed like crazy since then. Like he's definitely delayed. Now he's about to turn 4. He speaks like a 3-year-old, you know? So I feel like he's a year delayed. But I mean, you can blame it on therapy or, you know, age or what have you, but I feel like it's all God just like working, like helping him develop it. And yeah, it's just like my mindset like in the past year is so much different than the year prior. Like I'm just like, okay, you've got a couple words, you're good to go. I mean, I'm just glad you can say mama, and then like eventually we'll be in heaven, you'll be a little chatterbox.
Wow.
And but yeah, that's why I always, like, if I get discouraged, I just, like, think about heaven. I'm like, we're not going to be here for that much longer. Like, life seems long, but it's not. And I truly believe that, like, I don't know why God makes kids autistic. Like, I believe that Finn's autism is genetic, and that's how God made him. But I do feel like his autism will allow me to reach someone else who maybe is in the same journey, and I can, like, you know, speak truth into them. And hopefully that'll happen one day. And all that to say, I definitely wouldn't change him for the world. Like, I feel like his autism makes him who he is. Like, he is so funny. He is so sweet. He's so, like,
he's really cute,
touchy-lovey. I'm, like, obsessed with him. And I'm like, thank God I had this boy. Thank God he has autism. Like, he's just so perfect. And yeah, I'm really grateful for him. So I don't ever want him to listen to this and be like, I was disappointed I was having a boy, because it's just like I'm obsessed with him. Anyway, so eventually I'm feeling more comfortable. I've always wanted 2 kids. Like we've always said 2 and done. And eventually I feel more comfortable to have a second. And I'm like, surely that was a fluke last time. I'm not going to get pregnant next month again. And yet again, I get off my birth control and I'm pregnant the next month. And Zach's like, oh my gosh. But no, he was like, obviously not shocked this time around.
Yeah.
But it was a real fear for a while. I thought maybe I just want one. Like this whole journey has taken so much out of me. And I don't know if I'd survive this again.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, well, if it happens, like that's God's plan, and like he's gonna walk us through it, and you know that's all we need. And so I just assumed, I'm like, I'm gonna go into this thinking I'm having another boy, because obviously I want a girl, but I don't want to feel that, like I don't want to be upset with having a boy. I also had a deep fear of having another boy with autism, because for some reason it is just way more common for boys to have autism than girls, and girls can have it, they just don't show it in the same ways. They're really good at masking it. So a lot of times like girls have autism and you just don't know, and they just are a little quirky. And so I was like, I'm going into this thinking like I'm having a boy and maybe he'll probably have autism. And so that way I'm like preparing my heart for what's to come. And so we get our gender reveal results, and Zach and I are just like in the bathroom, and then we read them and it says we're having a girl. And I forgot to mention I did have a dream I was having a girl, but I decided to shove that to the back of my mind because I didn't want to get my hopes up.
So God gave you a gender reveal like before you had a gender reveal.
Yeah.
For both babies.
Yeah. I also have had a dream of a little girl, please, Lord, no. A little girl with tanner skin than I do, darker brown hair than I do, and she's like 7, and she's like standing in front of a White House, and we just bought a White House. And so I know. And so and that's exactly what Olive looks like. She's got nice olivey skin, and she's Olive has olive skin.
Yeah.
And she's got the darker brown hair. Anyway, yeah, so we get our girl, and her name is Olive, and I'm literally obsessed with her. She's just like perfect completion to our family. We're done. Please, God, don't give me any more children. But actually, I did have a dream that I got pregnant again with another girl, and I'm just like, that was not from you, Lord. Right?
I'm not a prophet.
No,
it won't come true.
I'm a false prophet. Just kidding. But yeah, that's my story.
I want to thank you so much for sharing that. But I want to go back because you told me one part of your story that I think is really beneficial. And that was when you and Zach like went out with members of a church.
Oh.
And how that kind of shaped your journey.
Yeah. So we were starting to get really close to these two people, and super involved with this church, and we were like starting to be involved with it, and we got to dinner with them, and Zach orders a beer, just this one beer, and mind you, we were eating dinner at a brewery. And so and we eat dinner, everything's great, it's a good conversation, we leave. We both get novels, paragraphs, text messages from these two people saying how Zach should not be drinking. He's not going to inherit the kingdom of God if he drinks, blah, blah, blah. They're really worried about him. And we were like, what the heck? Like, that is just not something we believe. Like the Bible says, you know, do not get drunk. Like
me, I will occasionally, but the interest is just gone.
Yeah.
And so like when
I think it's like you have to look at your heart. Like, why are you drinking?
Exactly. And it's like I realized when I was making the transition from when I used to drink a lot to, you know, kind of intermediary, it was like, oh, that's just because it's what I would use to fill space. Or it's like I'm so used to.
I mean, I used to like stress drink at the end of the day, like parenting and working. I'd be like,
it's a real thing.
I really want to have a glass of wine while I cooked because I feel on edge.
Yeah.
You know, I want to chill out. I mean, now I kind of just use that as like, Zach and I are on a date night. Like, let's celebrate and have, you know, a glass of wine together, you know. But yeah, so that was like our first, I don't like to call it church hurt, but like that's a good example of like, I mean, that caused us to stop going there because they were very involved. And we were like, well, if that's what the church stands for, then we don't believe that and we're not going to support it. And so we were like, okay, well, we're not going to go there anymore. And which like sucks because I mean, we did like feel the presence of God there. And just because, you know, that was their opinion and how they interpreted the Bible, we should have, you know, discerned what to do in that situation and asked God for guidance, but we decided to just leave. But yeah, that was interesting. And, you know, we kind of stopped talking to them and
I mean,
all that.
It's just crazy
it's a way,
because,
you know, that was definitely, you know, spiritual warfare, Satan using, you know, other believers, pitting them against each other to help make them step away from a place where they connected with God.
I just think we need to draw a line in the sand between like perfectionism and righteousness, right? Like to your point, like the motivation of drinking, but what's the motivation that was so aggravating to them? Was it like you're a church leader and if someone is questioning their faith?
And we weren't even leaders for this church. You know, we were like newcomers.
Yeah. And like, what is it? Is it they don't want to be associated with people who have a drink, like whatever their reasoning, you're justified in your reasoning for feeling a certain way, but like how you handle it, right? To like make you feel so bad about it in a long text thread. I don't know. And like not telling anyone to handle their business. It's just like we witness so much church hurt. Like I have so many friends who say, I went to church, I was going to group, but then like someone made me feel bad for someone I was dating because they weren't a believer. And then it's just so sad that it's hard to see past that person who hurt you to see the character of Jesus. Yeah. And to then make that differentiating decision and see like, again, like we were talking about truth and then righteousness, and look at your own motivations. And it's like, how would Jesus handle this?
Yeah.
Like if the Lord hasn't asked me to put something down yet, like that's between me and him. Like it's not between like you and me, it's between me and him. And so like if the Holy Spirit's going to transform me to change my habits, he will do that. I was listening to a great sermon this past Sunday, and there's this woman preaching, and she was saying she used to go out to dinner with her husband, and she used to be so paranoid he was looking at other women, and she would be like controlling, and she would wreck date night sometimes because she'd be like, were you looking at another woman? And that she had this clarifying moment of God spoke to her and said, you want to know what, whether he is or it isn't, that's between him and me. And so like I release you of this burden, because if he has an issue with something, like I will work through that with him and resolve it, but like it's not your burden to carry, you know? And I just kind of see it like that. It's like we can support people who are struggling with things, not to say like one beer means you're struggling, but like if someone is struggling with whatever issue we might not have as our own practice or habit, like there's a common ground to meet there, versus like pointing the finger and saying, give this up. If someone, went up to my pastor and I said, hey, just to let you know, like I'm a call girl. And if he said,
which happened.
Yeah, which did happen. But if he was to say like, sorry, you can't come to church because that's your job. Like I would have never, I don't know if I'd be here. I would have stopped going to church.
He was like, cool, see you next week.
That's not what he said. What he said to me changed my life. And he said, whatever your sin is between you and God, like I'm just here to help you get closer to Jesus.
Wow.
And then I had another friend who I like confessed so much of my baggage to. And she said, it's not my job to judge you. It's my job to love you. And in loving you, like, I'm going to help you become more like Jesus.
Yeah.
And like know the character he is.
Yeah.
And so like we talked about church hurt and all of that, but it's just, I think a lot of times God will allow those things to happen because he wants us to move. He doesn't want to get us too comfortable in our faith and attach it to certain places or structures or people.
Yeah.
And like, who knows how many chances you've had to spread the gospel since leaving that church and going to others.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do I know?
No, it's good. I love it. I mean, it says to lead people with gentleness.
Yes. The fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah. And that wasn't very gentle.
It wasn't gentle.
I mean, I do believe there are people that need more than gentleness.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I was one of those people a little bit, because I needed Isaiah Saldivar yelling into the microphone for me to get it.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, just the way it happened was unfortunate. But yeah, so that's my story. Hope you enjoyed it.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I mean,
of course, and I can't wait to hear yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shut up. Yours is so good. I mean, if you guys want like very detailed of Kelsey's story, if you don't know, she has a book. It's called Folly. I thought it was pronounced Foley.
Which is crazy, because whoever wrote a book named Foley, you're probably getting a lot of sales, because Madison tells all of her clients about it. So like if you wrote a book named Foley and you have a lot of sales, it's probably came from this girl's referral.
Yeah. It is so good. Brought me closer to Jesus for sure.
Oh, but I love that.
We'll do an episode of you, right, Kelsey?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. But thank you so much, Madison, for sharing.
Of course.
And I mean,
thanks for listening.
Testimonies are so powerful. I mean, it says in Revelations 12:9, like we are saved by the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I think it's like 1/3 of the stories of what Jesus said are parables. And it's because there's power in stories. There's power in transformation. And
love that.
We can only like point the finger and like recommend things so much. But when we encapsulate things in story and like see how people lived, it just makes it so much more approachable. Yeah. And so like I didn't know all of those struggles you had and all of that. And they're also
I didn't want to talk about having sex with Zach because before marriage, because I think people have like a pretty picture of our marriage and waiting till marriage, which we did. We had like an almost 2-year gap of, waiting. Yeah. But I was like, I feel like that really needs to be said, because I feel that there are a lot of people having sex before marriage and they think, well, I've done it already, so that ship has sailed. But it's just a lie from the enemy. It's not true. And God would rather be using you than having to continue and forgive you constantly. So Yeah. I'm like, yeah, it is good. No. But yeah,
Come on.
in that, in doing, I mean, in like surrendering, listening to my convictions, you know, I was brought closer to him, and that's just like the only goal we should have. So, and he's not trying to be unfair. He's not like, sorry, I know it's fun, but you can't do that. Like, God loves sex. He made it. I'm serious. He made it, but he wants you to use it how he, you know, planned for it to be used. And that's just,
it was all meant to be beautiful. And the minute we start exploiting anything, it becomes ugly.
Yeah.
Right?
And when you do it with someone who's not your spouse, you're giving a piece of your soul to that person. And, you know, then we're going to get into soul ties and all that. But all that to say, that's why I felt led to share that. And I asked Zach, I'm like, do you mind if I talk about this? And he's like, my mom's going to listen to that. I'm like, I know, but I think she'll be proud of us.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you could say like 3 takeaways from your testimony of like how Jesus transformed your mind, or like 3 life lessons you've learned up to this point, what would they be? Putting you on the spot.
I know. I'm like,
obviously, like one is like the sanctity of marriage and like the holiness between like 2 people and that covenant.
Yeah.
So that's one.
Yeah.
What
and
else
just,
would you say?
I mean, another one is just like, sometimes life does not go according to your plan. Like, I never planned to have a kid with autism, but God's plan is better. And I mean, he's produced me into a much better person because of it. I'm much more patient. I have way more perseverance. And I feel like I can relate with the whole demographic of people who have children with autism. And that's a really special thing. Yeah, I mean, I think we can just take away from the church hurt thing. Like, I've experienced it myself. It wasn't anything crazy. Like, my pastor didn't have an affair with the, you know, whatever, but it still happened. And, you know, I don't blame them. Like, everyone, you know, falls short of the glory of God. But, and, you know, they thought, you know, they were doing what's right, and they were trying to pull us closer to Jesus. Just in the way it happened, it kind of pulled us away a little. And also, you know, we were at fault too, because we didn't ask God for discernment in that situation. And so I would definitely say, just like, don't put people on a pedestal, and don't let, you know, the sins of others pull you away from Jesus at all. And just look to the big guy. You'll be good to go.
That's good stuff. I love it.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
And thanks so much, everyone, for joining. We are Come On Somebody. I am Kelsey and Madison. I don't think we've introduced ourselves.
I know.
So we're doing it
Maddy. Or I really go by Madison, but I just feel like Kelsey and Maddy sounds better together.
It's true.
So I'm Maddy.
Yeah, I'm Kelsey. But thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more. We are literally just 2 girls who love Jesus, and we try and have spirit-led conversations.
Yep.
And we just want to share how God
sometimes we plan for conversations, and he's like,
sometimes we show up
like
and we're
last episode we were like, it's gonna be purely spiritual warfare, and you guys got a whole jumbled situation, but it was all from God. That's what he wanted to say. So there you go.
Sometimes we show up, we're like, we're going to talk about this. And God's like, no, you're not.
He's like, you'll touch on it, but it's not going to be what the episode's about.
Yeah. So,
but anyway.
But thanks for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next Friday.
Yes,
thanks.